The White House continues to defend President Trump's tariffs today in the wake of backlash both here and in the United States. Trump's border czar Tom Homan was asked today whether he's confident they'll stop illegal immigration and the flow of fentanyl.
I'm very confident in the president's plan. I think the president's doing exactly what he should be doing. Again, look at the success he's had. We had border numbers down 90% in 3 weeks. Think what this president's going to do in the next 4 to 6 months. I mean, I agree with the president's policies on this. I think he's a game changer.
But some Republicans are talking about how these tariffs are going to cost their communities. Joining me now is Bryan Barnett, the mayor of Rochester Hills in Michigan, which is a suburb of Detroit. Mayor Barnett, it's good to meet you, sir. Thank you for being here, sir.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You say your community is going to be one of the hardest hit by these tariffs. You're a Republican. We've not heard a lot of Republicans speaking out against this. What's your view on President Trump's policy here?
Well, I'm all for secure borders. I mean, I think we have a very common stance on that. But the tariffs, at least when you're in my neck of the woods, which is in Southeast Michigan, when Canada is such a huge trading partner for us, and the auto industry is so inextricably linked with Canadian manufacturers and suppliers, it's a really big deal for Michigan businesses and ultimately Michigan residents.
When you look at the border, do you think Canada's a problem? I know there's been a response to the concerns over fentanyl and seizures are way down, but you know, as the mayor of a city in a border state, do you think the Canadian border is a problem for you?
I mean, I think every nation wants to have secure borders, and I don't think having a focus towards that is ever, it's money well spent. But the idea that tariffs would be tied to it is a bit unusual. Usually tariffs are tied to something more economic than policy related. So it's hard to know. And I think the biggest challenge here is the uncertainty. I was talking to one of our biggest CEOs of our largest companies, and that's the biggest thing is investors like certainty, job markets like certainty, and that's not a currency that we have in great supply right now as businesses are trying to figure out how long will these be on? What does this mean? Am I in this? I mean, we're grateful that it's been paused, but not everyone is in the big three. So if you're a supplier, if you're working on the fringes of that, are you included in this? So there's a lot of uncertainty right now, and that's a challenge.
So, Michigan obviously was a battleground state. It went Republican. The auto sector is incredibly important to your economy. You're there in Oakland County, in that ring around Detroit. I mean, what's at stake for your constituents if these tariffs persist and this uncertainty continues?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. We're a day into it, and so it's hard to know exactly how long they'll be on or what the impact will be. But everyone I've talked to, and including looking at our own budget as a municipality, and we're a city of 80,000 people. We have a $250 million budget. A lot of that is on infrastructure. I sat down with my leadership team yesterday and said, what did we plan for costs? Because the costs of steel and lumber and really almost everything is going to go up dramatically. We may not be able to do even internally what we thought we were going to be able to do. And that conversation is playing out in businesses large and small across not just Southeast Michigan, but across the country. Canada is such an important trading partner. My job as a local official is to make sure that those folks in Washington know the on-the-ground realities. And I'll be using the next month to hopefully share that as often as possible.
I watched the president's speech last night, not a State of the Union, but State of the Union style. And you could see the divide right there in the crowd, right? The Republicans up and applauding, Democrats getting kicked out, holding up signs, refusing any, and he was kind of taunting them, let's be honest. But it's not hard to find Democrats to criticize what he's doing here on this. Where are Republicans on this? You're a Republican in Michigan. How do Republicans view this policy and its consequences for your country?
Yeah, I've been doing this for a while. I've been mayor of my city for 18 years, and I think the Republicans are in pretty much lockstep on a lot of issues. They're very supportive of the president's border policy approach. They may not peel off on DEI issues yet, but this issue, tariffs, I think is one that it will be hard to keep all the Republicans together, because I think the Michigan delegation, for example, the Republicans in the Michigan congressional delegation are going to have a lot of their traditionally Republican allies, the chambers of commerce, the larger companies that often are allied with Republican beliefs and principles and campaigns, are going to be saying, hey, this is really problematic for us on the ground floor here. And I think it'll be hard to keep that same coalition together completely through this, which I think maybe is why you've seen this pause on the auto industry immediately. I think there are hopefully some conversations happening around that.
Well, there are conversations happening today between the Canadian Finance Minister and your Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick. We understand the President is being briefed maybe now, and there's going to be further conversations. They try to broaden the exemptions and maybe get to a point where the tariffs just kind of go away and they can collaborate on even more responses to the fentanyl concerns. What would you say to the President as he weighs this? Because Canada is demonstrating a willingness to move. What would you say to the President about what you think he should do to help the people you represent?
Keep talking and keep listening. Keep talking at the federal level with the federal partners that we're working with. Obviously, Canada's been a longstanding friend and ally, and keep listening. Keep listening to the local folks, the mayors, and obviously those in local government, but also those business owners, because that's really the front lines of this. I mean, a vehicle in the auto industry goes back and across the border 5 or 6 times. That's a real challenge for trying to keep prices down for everyday Americans. We talk so much about groceries, but we may be talking about autos and leases and all the other things that home prices and so forth very, very quickly. So keep talking and keep listening.
Sir, it was good to meet you. That's Mayor Bryan Barnett, the mayor of Rochester Hills in Michigan. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much.
The Republican mayor of Rochester Hills, Michigan, Bryan Barnett, one of the U.S. mayors, raising concerns about this. My understanding is that he may have watched the Four Nations Cup final with my next guest, who is the mayor of Winnipeg, Scott Gillingham, who met with the leadership of the U.S. Conference of Mayors several days ago. Mayor Gillingham, did you watch that game with a bunch of American mayors as Connor McDavid broke their hearts? Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, I sure did. Well, it was an exciting game, and I had a good time with Mayor Bryan Barnett of Michigan and Mayor Andy Ginter of
Columbus, Ohio.
And some of the other mayors as well.
Yeah, Mayor Ginter was on the show last night. It was interesting. They all referenced you, so we had to have you on, sir. And I'm going to guess you have more of an emotional stake in that game than maybe some of the U.S. mayors did. I wonder, though, what is your sense from talking to them, how they feel about this? I mean, they're lower down in the power structure, obviously, from the president, but they're right there acutely feeling the knock-on effects of any kind of economic slowdown.
Well, look, the impact of tariffs plays out in our cities, and I think that's the point. The economies of our nations either are centered in or they flow through our cities. So when we're talking about tariffs and their impact, it's going to hit jobs and paychecks in our cities. And so, when I talked to my U.S. counterparts, they understood that. I was really pleased to see that conference, the U.S. Conference of Mayors, come out with a statement a couple of days ago asking the president to abandon the concept of tariffs and to strengthen the already good trading relationship that Canada has with the United States.
Have you spoken to any of your American counterparts since, I guess, the trade war began?
I have. I've spoken with Mayor Andy Ginter of Columbus, Ohio. Spoke with Mayor David Holt of Oklahoma City, and expressed appreciation to them for taking that stand. I think we're really aligned as cities on both sides of the border because we know that this impacts the residents in our community. Not only does it impact the residents of a community because ultimately the cost and the price of tariffs gets passed on to the consumer, but it's also going to make it more expensive for us as cities to do our business. It'll make procurement for infrastructure projects more expensive, fleet vehicles, transit buses, all of that. The price of all of those things will go up for us as cities, compounding the challenges that we have already.
Now, I will confess I do not know the granular limitations on municipalities in Manitoba, but I know in a lot of provinces, municipalities are not allowed to run deficits, right? So increased costs would be an enormous challenge just to maintain base level operations throughout something like this if it persists. Do you have that challenge in Winnipeg? Do your American counterparts have to deal with that? Because I know they have more of a strong mayor executive system in most places, and there are differences there.
Yeah, I'm not sure the nuances of all the different, states and cities within the states in the United States, but certainly here across Canada, we as municipalities have to balance our budgets. We cannot run deficits like federal and provincial governments can do. But that's one of the reasons that we as mayors across the nation are supporting our premiers and supporting our federal leaders. We are part of Team Canada, and I appreciate that my Premier Canoe, is invited to be on his U.S. tariff council that meets regularly right now, because really, as I said at the outset, the impact of tariffs, the impact of a trade war, it plays out in our cities, and it has an impact on the sectors of our community. Just recently, you know, I met with one of our major ag manufacturers here in Winnipeg, Macdon Industries, that employs 1,800 people within our city. You know, tariffs will impact them. It makes a difference, and so we're trying as cities to stand with our communities to make sure that we're protecting jobs and paychecks.
I know the Mayor Ginther and his group, the U.S. Mayors Association, they have passed a resolution and issued a statement and done interviews calling for the president to reverse this. I am not dismissing that effort, but I'm not sure that moves Donald Trump. I don't even know if that reaches Donald Trump because, you know, he is very much a constituency of one here. Beyond sort of resolutions, are mayors taking any kind of action, do you think? Because I know there is pretty much a unity in Canada, some disagreement on the margins of the retaliation tactics. But what are you hearing about any kind of mobilizing efforts by mayors in the United States on this?
Well, as you just heard, you know, Mayor Barnett speak about the fact that he is leveraging relationships that he has with either the local chambers of commerce, the local business sector, just to help press the message and get to the right set of ears in Washington, the detrimental impacts of tariffs. We're doing the same here. As I said, we're taking a very Team Canada approach as mayors here within the nation, trying to, for sure, stand with our provincial leaders. Locally here, we're also looking at, you know, our own procurement circumstances within and how we procure services here within Winnipeg, keeping in lockstep with our province as well, and looking at what we can do to support the reduction of interprovincial trade barriers to make it easier for companies here within Winnipeg to sell their product to other provinces.
But, you know, Mayor Gillingham, I wonder how you manage that, right? Because shifting your procurement practices, you know, there's a reason you procure where you procure because it's usually the lowest cost. And if you have to maintain a balanced budget and we're going into a period of economic disruption that's going to, you know, dampen economic activity, increase costs, cities with their inability to deficit finance things, you're just going to have to not do things, or you're going to need extra support from the Premier or the Prime Minister or somebody to make ends meet now.
Cities always have to make hard choices. The longer this tariff trade war goes on, the more difficult choices we're going to have to make on the very things you're talking about, David. And so we're watching. We've asked our staff to report publicly to our Standing Committee on Finance and Economic Development on the impacts to our city of tariffs, whether the cost of certain items are going up, whether we're having trouble procuring supplies from other sources, or just how the tariffs will impact us. But yes, tariffs hurt. They cost us all money, and the longer this goes on, the more it's going to cost us. Just
as a final point, Mayor Gillingham, I mean, do you ever look at this and say, I have a perpetual sense of disbelief that this is where we are, that Canada and the U.S. is in a trade war. The Prime Minister is openly saying that this is an attempt to weaken our economy so that we can be easier to annex, and the President is kind of not saying any different. I mean, what was the sense of this, when you talk to Canadian mayors and your American counterparts?
Well, you heard Minister Jolie use the words chaotic. It's just absolutely chaotic. We never know, and as cities and as a mayor, never know from 1 hour to the next what is going to come out of Washington. Look, Canada and the U.S. have been such close friends. We have an integrated trade relationship. When I was with my U.S. mayor counterparts, we were friendly. It felt like it always felt, except we've got this cloud hanging over us that we just never know what's coming out of Washington. And frankly, when the president talks about the idea of annexing Canada or Canada being the 51st state, it's reprehensible, it's offensive, and I've never seen Canadians more united than they are right now.
Mayor Scott Gillingham of Winnipeg, thank you for waiting while we heard the Foreign Affairs Minister, and thanks for being here tonight, sir. It's good to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you.